freezing. I don't know if any of you are watching the international news or if British Columbia made the international news, but looks like I'm stranded. I can't get home. All of our highways have been washed out from torrential downpours. Amazing. The carnage is unbelievable. Entire towns / small cities have been evacuated. I think Merritt was evacuated. Caught some news last night. It was unbelievable. Anyway, I don't know when I'm gonna get when I can go home, but I guess this trip's extended. Anyway, what else is new? I don't know if I shared this earlier, but I screwed up. I didn't bring warm winter boots. I brought my hunting boots, which are normally not for this type of weather. They're tight. They really fit my foot perfectly, and I actually have frostbite on my two big toes, and it looks amazing. It's actually dead chunks of flesh in my toes. It's unbelievable. It's very, very painful. Oh well, I guess I'll have the scars of a true adventurer by the time this lifetime's open. By the time this lifetime's over. I'm gonna finish off that email that from yesterday. I think they had 2 or 3 experiences on there, so I'll get right into it. I'll carry on with my day. Might have to go have a fire somewhere. It looks sunny and balmy, but it is cold. Story number 2, October 1st, 2019. Los Padre National Forest near Santa Barbara. Worst night of my life. I went on a solo backpacking trip in the Los Padre National Forest. I mapped out a loop trail, which I didn't really know was possible. I didn't know this area very well, and I didn't think the trail had been maintained for over a dozen years. My guess is that it would be about 50 miles, but I really didn't know. I was planning on doing it in 3 days, but I had enough food for 5. About 7 minutes into my hike, I found this beautiful campsite area with a waterfall and natural swimming hole. I didn't make it as far as I would have liked to my first day, but I couldn't pass up swimming in this beautiful creek, in this slot canyon. I set up my hammock, went for a swim, ate some dinner, and turned in early. I figured if I hit the hay early, I'd get up before sunrise and get back on pace. I woke up about an hour later to find that dreadful feeling of being watched. It was absolutely horrible. There's only a sliver of light left from the sunset, so I decided I would pitch a tent, then rain tarp on and go back to sleep. I set up the tent faster than I've ever set up a tent before. I felt as if I was being watched the entire time. I crawled in and tried to force myself back to sleep. I guess the tent gave me a false sense of security. Out of sight, out of mind. I fell back asleep. Several hours later, and about 2 in the morning, I was woken to a whistle coming from up the creek. I sat up in my tent listening. I didn't hear any birds, crickets, or anything. I don't even think I remember hearing the creek or waterfall. But 5 minutes passed, and as soon as I laid my head down, I heard the same whistle again from about 200 yards up the creek. I sat back up with my eyes as big as saucers, just listening. I knew this wasn't a bird or any wildlife. I sat perfectly still in my tent and listened. I then heard another whistle from 200 yards down the creek this time. The original whistler up creek quickly responded to the whistler down creek. Then straight up the cliff side in the canyon above me, I heard a third whistle respond. 3 whistlers. About every minute or so, they would take turns whistling. 1 minute it would be from up creek, the next minute from down creek. Then following minute up above me on the cliff. They took turns in perfect order, never going out of turn. I listened to this for about half an hour before I realized that the whistlers were closing in on my tent. The whistles were getting louder and closer. First it was 200 yards, 150 yards, 100 yards, 50 yards, until all 3 whistlers were right outside my tent. They were whistling down at me. I was shaking in my sleeping bag, terrified, Steve. What followed next was the worst experience I've ever experienced in my 31 years of life. The ground began to shake like an earthquake, and I felt electric shocks going through my body. It was very painful. I think I let out an involuntary yell from the pain. Tears were rolling down my face because I was so terrified. I mustered up the strength and yelled from the top of my lungs, "Leave me alone." Then silence. The electric shock stopped, the ground stopped shaking. I tried to listen as best I could for any noise while shaking with fear in my sleeping bag. I then heard a stern voice in my head telling me to leave. He sounded angry. It was the same mind speak that I heard years earlier. They then turned and started to walk away from me. I could feel the ground shaking as they left. They then entered the thick of the forest and broke trees and branches until they were all out of range. I stayed awake in my tent all night until first light, and then went back down the way I came to my truck. I could not be completing the loop trail. I was going home. I ended up not leaving my bedroom for 3 months other than to get food. I was terrified to even go outside my home. Friends and family started to worry about me. Finally, I told one of my friends what happened, and he showed me your channel. I even got a therapist who specializes in PTSD and told him everything. Probably saved my life, so it was probably as close to suicide as I could get. My friend who showed me your channel has gotten me back out in the woods and even got me to go overnight camping on several occasions, but I highly doubt I'll ever go solo backpacking in the woods for the rest of my life. I have more stories I want to tell, but I feel this one's long enough. Thank you for all you do. And I doubt I'm the only life you have saved. Very grateful. Forever grateful, Tyler. Well, Tyler, that's something else, man. I'm glad you got back out there. Everybody's got to get back out there. You can't quit in life, right? Try not to fear death. Try not to fear anything. It's not easy, especially being a human being. Mainstream narratives are programmed to inflict dread and fright into each and every one of us nonstop, and I don't know why. It's kind of sad, really. We're all going to die. There's no way out of it. So why be scared of it? And it's not the end either. But anyway, that's a bit of a babble on a different topic. But good for you getting back out there, man. Good for you. You're lucky to have a good friend that cares enough to get you back out there, right? It's getting cold. I mean, it's staying cold. It was real cold this morning on the way in. Videotaped some real big bull elk. Videotaped some moose. Seen some deer. A lot of life here. What else do we have? There's a lot of emails here with photographs, and I can't do photographs in the edit here. I might be able to, but I don't think so. But I will try to save those for later. We even have a video. Well, you know what? I'll share this one. I'll try to hold the photo up to you guys with this phone. I think I've done it before, and as long as I remember, I'll get those photos up once I get home and get back to editing properly. Hey Steve, love your channel. Love that you're taking the time to do what you're doing for the subject. You can use my name or not. I've believed in Bigfoot for some time now, since an experience where my cousin came face to face within feet of a family of 3 when we were 16 years old. We were out on our first hunt together without adults, alone in the mountains of southern Oregon. He never hunted again and now has passed on some 45 years later. I'd written my story and sent it to another organization some time ago, only to have them kind of shine me on and not even include the story for some reason with all the other stories for that region, even though mine had more credible information than most of their others of the same category that were posted, which was odd to me. That was only one story that I opted to share with them at the time as a kind of a test for later if I ever got permission to share what I'm sharing with you today. If they would have been a little more engaging and didn't treat me like a child in some respects, I would think of someday sharing the pictures I've had all these years. In the early 90s, I returned to Southern Oregon, where I was raised after being a policeman in Washington for about 8 years. I quit that work after feeling like God suggested I should. It was taking a toll on me physically and emotionally. I was now doing something else and trying to reconnect with my family, who had to deal with a husband and father working a job that left him emotionally and physically absent. It was hard changing shifts every 3 months and never having time off with the family. Once we moved to start attending a community center for urban dwelling Native American people in a neighboring city where they could connect with people like themselves. I built and maintained a website for them as well as worked on their computers. One day in the early 2000s, the director of the center walked in and told me about some elders that needed a picture scanned into the computer so they could preserve it and make copies. I was told to keep a copy but to respect their privacy and never share it outside of family members, as they were fearful that people would come hunting the Bigfoot on the reservation if word got out. I kept this picture to myself for about 20 years now, but recently communicated with the director and was told it's been long enough and I can share it. I trust you because you have proven yourself loyal to the truth, and I love that you are no nonsense. I won't share the location it was taken, but will tell the story as I remember it told to me. On the day the elders' grandchildren had been on the back 40, so to speak, of their property on the reservation, and were startled by a very large hair-covered upright figure near a tree. It was bent over trying to stand a smaller baby or child up on its feet, but the small one kept falling over and appeared badly injured. I don't think the creature saw that we were there, as it was too busy with the smaller one. They described the bigger one as appearing to be a female, and they believed the little one may have fallen from the tree and was possibly mortally injured. They bolted from the scene immediately, running back to the house to let everyone know they had just seen the hairy man. I don't remember if they went back out to look for it with the elders. I would think they probably didn't, as all the elders I have talked to say to leave it alone and give it space out of respect. 3 days later, however, their dog came back to the house packing what appeared to be a half-eaten leg. They took pictures of the leg and then took it to Fish and Wildlife and turned it over to them. Oh, big mistake. They were told they did know what it was, but would have a biologist. They did not know what it was, but would have a biologist look at it. They left after asking the Fish and Wildlife official to let them know what they find out when the biologist has a chance to look at it. Many weeks went by and they hadn't heard from Fish and Wildlife, so they went back to inquire about their findings, only to be told they never received a leg from them and the official wasn't sure what they were talking about. Typical, isn't it? After I received the picture, I took it to my father, who was a doctor, and asked his opinion. He told me his opinion was it was not a leg because the proportions were wrong. One of the things he cited was the length of the digits was not consistent with the toes, but rather fingers, as well as lengths of the other bones were more consistent with arm bone proportions. My father was convinced it was an arm. It was then noticed that what appeared to be a possible fifth digit on the right side that was folded under the others. This would make it a right arm of whatever creature this was from, with exception of a smaller pinky finger. The other digits seemed to be like our hand in that the middle finger is the longest, and the two fingers on either side are about the same length as each other, but shorter than the middle finger. If you fold your thumb down under, you will see other angles that are similar. I've sent the original from my scan as well as blow-ups with a few labels. Please tell me what you think, as, like myself, we have spent a lot of time hunting and have seen many animals, but maybe there is an animal in North America that might not have appendages that look more human-like that I have not seen. Bless you and your family. I'll send my first encounter story at some point to let you know why I've been interested in this subject for so long if you're interested. Thank you. Jerry Aronson. Jerry, thank you so much for that share. That's an odd picture for sure. So I will try to show you guys this way first, okay? How is that? You seeing that? Or I gotta go this side? Try that. It's a little odd, isn't it? In reflection there, I can't tell. You guys, sorry. This is rough. But there's one, okay? And there's another one. I guess they've written something on there for it. Is that working? Hope so. And 1, 2. Okay, I've got 2 photographs in that share. That's something else, isn't it? I can tell you I've seen a lot of animal parts that have been decomposed, both above and below water. And I've seen dead wolves, dead bears, grizzlies, black bears, you name it. And that doesn't look like any of those to me at all, obviously. Pretty peculiar. Once again, it's just a photo. There's nothing we can do about it, right? I wonder if anybody kept that thing. But, you know, numerous people have turned in DNA from these things in the past. And when it comes to the authorities, this just doesn't matter. We got to kick them to the curb. We have no use for them. I don't. I can't speak for all of you, but I don't have any use for them. They're not going to make a difference in my life. Only all you are. That's it. Thanks for sounding in again, Jerry. Be safe out there, and I'm looking forward to you sharing your experience with us, all right? All right, one Oh, I'm getting frozen. Hey, Steve. These two encounters have been sent in before, but I don't think they were ever shared on your How to Hunt, so in case they got lost, I'm submitting them again. It happened a bit over 60 years ago in a backwoods town up in the Catskill Mountains, shortly after our wedding. There was no TV or radio reception up there then, so no one really knew about the now famous Gimlin video. Oh. How come our noses run when it gets cold? It doesn't make sense to me. Or heard of only such thing as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. My husband drove a big rig and was across country this one particular night. With no TV or radio, I was very engrossed in a Hemingway novel as I sat in my chair right next to the old wood stove. It was a quiet night, but very cold. My infant daughter was asleep in her basket next to me, and the dog was curled up at my feet. The old house faced a very tall and steep mountain that everyone seemed to ignore as just a part of the landscape. Sometime around midnight, the front door exploded open right in front of us. I jumped and the dog, part German shepherd, snarling, leapt at the dark, hairy figure filling the doorway. Suddenly it wasn't there, and the dog sulked back in like it just normally woke up. I assumed I was just seeing things and got up to shut and lock the door, thinking it was quite odd that there was no wind, and why did it explode open like that? The next day I asked in town if we had a mini tornado or a weird storm last night. All answers were nope and didn't hear nothing, and so on. Steve, that memory never left me, and I couldn't imagine how the vision could just vanish. Never had that happen before or since, but now I do understand. Several of the people right into you have also had the vision disappear. The only one I shared my vision with about seeing a big dark hairy thing in the doorway was and still is a very good friend. I didn't see any mouth, nose, or eyes, but now realize that it stood so tall, its mouth was above the door frame. I'd be glad if it never happened, but it did. I can relate to that last statement. I hope not waste my time typing this out again, and I hope someone benefits from it. Several years later, we had moved about 50 miles south for a better job offer. I knew our home was more comfortable and shopping was easier. We had enough land for my beloved horses, dogs, cats, goats, pigs, and on and on. We had more friends, 2 daughters now, and great riding trails. My friend and I decided this hot summer day that it was way too hot for the horses and ponies to be left to be on the trail. So we packed up the 4 girls, put some lunch food in the car, and headed a bit north for a picnic in some cooler shaded mountains. The strangest thing was these mountains that were thick and hardly populated and quiet, were the very same range labeled by the state Woodland Preserve that ran way up north, where we had moved from. I didn't realize at the time, not that it would have mattered then. We found the desolate, deserted old farm foundation across from some thick forest where our family occasionally picnicked and quietly drove down the lane and parked under the huge trees. By the way, this land is very close to the Neversink Reservoir, where a man wrote you about seeing a Sasquatch near the water. There are no houses between the 2 tiny towns, and they're many miles apart. Almost no one uses this land or drives on this road. So quiet it is, unless 4 young girls, 7 and 9, are goofing around while the moms are unpacking food. As we were getting the food out, I heard what seemed like heavy steps across the road up on the steep, brushy hill. Hey, is that a deer or maybe a bear coming down that hill? I asked my friend Marth. Oh, I don't know, let's unload. There's some kind of flat tabletop something. We set the lunch food on and the girls were digging in it, laughing and jumping in the bubbling creek that ran alongside our little spot under the big trees. Suddenly, we heard and felt steps so strongly that it was like a part of us. I quietly blurted, "That's no deer or bear," as we, all 6 of us, jumped and ran to the car. It started as the last door slammed shut, or before, and we got up out of there, leaving the lunch and didn't care. None of us have ever been back there, nor do I ever plan to be. Now, this is almost 50 years ago, and no one said one word about it then. I asked my youngest daughter if she remembered the picnic day. Her words were, "Mom, that was terrifying," and said she's pretty sure she saw some big dark thing behind the brush above the old barn foundation. That was about 50 years ago, and none of us have ever been back there, nor do I ever plan to be. I don't need any proof. That's what you're doing, Steve. Enjoy those beautiful horses and life in general. We catch most of your videos and enjoy them. God bless and keep you safe, Carol. Carol, thanks for that share. And that's quite the impact when something has a lifelong, 50-year-long impact like that, right? Where you cannot, will not ever go back there. And 50 years later, nothing's changed. It's pretty tough for a bear or a deer to leave that kind of impact on people, isn't it? Anyway, my fingers are thoroughly frozen now from doing that. And I think I'm gonna go head back out. This takes me a while to get here. You can see there's some farm fields way off in the distance, but I can't get into where I am from that direction. I have to go all the way around a couple of mountains and down a valley on an old cut line, because the oil field industry, natural gas industry, has got a lot of the access blocked off. But I managed to find my way into this one big, huge chunk of parcel of land, and I'm learning a lot about it. I've seen a lot of game. It's pretty cool. But anyway, I got to go back and thaw out, and it seems to be working. These phones, I got my old phone video recording, and I'm using my new phone which has hundreds of emails on it that haven't been heard yet. And we'll keep this ball rolling anyway. Something for me to do in the evenings while I am now stranded in the north of British Columbia. Talk to you guys later. Be safe, man.